So you have told me over the years that you were prohibited by your father from actually ever really writing about family life. And now we're beginning to talk about at least your youth and some of your experiences from them. So I guess one of the things I was curious about is your relationship with your grandfather Laird. I know you spent a fair amount of time with him and he even took you fishing. So tell me about life with Grandpa Papa.
Okay. I never went fishing with my grandfather Laird.
Okay.
That was my grandfather Macy. My grandfather Laird was an old man when I first met him, and he had been the subject. I won't say victim because he was never a victim of anything. He was. A lot of people regarded him as a saint. He had a skin cancer on his back, and this is before I knew him, when he was like 65, and they treated it with radiation, and the radiologist left him under too long, and they burned a hole in his back the size of a man's fist that could never heal. It was the most unspeakable accident. Terrible. So, for every day of the rest of his life, he had to have this like open wound in his back, dressed, bandaged. And every month he would like visit his surgeon who would like pick out pieces of decaying bone from his back. So when I met Papa, this is what we called him, Papa. We all called him Papa. He had like 6 grandchildren. He was always dressed in a suit and tie. He never expressed his pain. And I had the unique opportunity to spend more time with him than any one of his other grandchildren. My sister had an unfortunate congenital problem with her eyes, so she had to go to Camden, Philadelphia on a regular basis to have like eye exams and new glasses and all that kind of stuff. So I was left with Papa, and we just sat and looked at each other, talked to each other. I wrote a post earlier today about the fact that this is the grandfather who taught me how to play chess, which is, of course, wrong, and that what he taught me was how to move chess players because he really didn't care about chess any more than I ever have. He simply thought it was polite to know how to move them, where to put the knight, where to put the pawn, how the bishop moves, and how to do the castling move with the rook. All that, but we never learned anything about chess strategy. We played it like it was checkers. He he talked to me a lot about life. He was a devout Christian man, but he could quote the Bible. He did not exhort you to do this or that. Like, be thou as Matthew says in 14:1. It was nothing like that. He was like he was concerned about things like how God created the universe. His favorite chapter was my father's house has many mansions. And you could see why he would be thinking this. Because many mansions means, okay, there might be other mansions beyond this one. He talked about creation and about the length of the first day. He said, how long would it have taken God to mold the earth in his hands? How do we measure that day? We can't. And I'm sitting there and I'm 7 years old. And I'm thinking, yeah. And what he's telling me is you can't read Genesis literally. There is nothing, and then there is light, and then there is the earth, and then eventually there is the seventh day. It's how many millions of years does it take to get to the seventh day? That's what Bob is asking me. Which is to say that science is not discrepant with what we read in the scriptures. And then he wants to talk about Groucho Marx on Who Do You Trust? Who is probably still the funniest man on TV, there ever was. And we had fun. And the thing is, the other thing I learned from Baba is I had toys that I could play with, and as a little boy, I was also prone to chatter a little bit, and he would say, Robbity. He'd call me Robbity. Could you keep it down a little bit? Because only slowly did I realize that actually, sounds made his back hurt worse. Which is a slow way to realize, he is in pain all the time. And I knew about the hold his back. I mean, my sister and I had stayed overnight with our grandparents, and this nurse came, and she came out with dressings and stuff all wrapped up in a plastic bag. She is changing an open wound every single morning. Every single morning. And then here comes Baba. I was so I learned more than anything, I guess, from him about courage. And the thing was, when World War I came, that's how old he was, he tried to volunteer, and he was a chemist, and he went into the conscription people, and they said, you're registered 4K. And he said, what's that? And he said, that means that we draft you after we draft the women and children. So he was sidelined right from the very beginning. He was amazing. But he was a chemist at the DuPont Chambers Works, and during the war, there was an incident involving a lead ethyl release in the plant. Lead ethyl released is a deadly toxin, think of sarin gas. And so Papa was in charge, and he said, get everybody out of here. Evacuate everybody. And then he went in himself and turned off the main valve. Which meant that he was a dead man. Now, this is the other thing you learn about Bob. Is we come from a family that has all of these legends associated with it. He was supposed to be dead. My dad should never have been born. But they carted him out, and he was raving in a closet. His brother was one of the best doctors on one of the best, Harley Street stand-ins in Philadelphia. And he jumped into his Auburn Roadster. He made it from Philadelphia to Salem in 40 minutes, which is still impossible. And he saved my grandfather. And the reason I know that he was a great doctor was that he also saved me from being scarred for life.